As a CPA, I've used countless types of tax preparation software over the years, so I love digging into the details whenever a new edition is released. In this episode, I'm reviewing the TurboTax software for use in preparing 2019 tax returns due in 2020. This episode is not a mere walkthrough, it is a true review where I go through TurboTax's features, its free plan, its paid plans, the user experience, pros and cons, and more. So many of you know that TurboTax is generally viewed as the cream of the crop of do-it-yourself tax software with the price point to prove it. And in my opinion, TurboTax truly does offer a bit more streamlined tax return preparation process than its less expensive competitors, but of course it's not without its drawbacks. I like to start my tax software reviews by discussing the free version of the software, since I know that this piece of information is all some of you want to know about. So let's start with talking about the TurboTax Free Edition. Now, the good thing about the TurboTax Free Edition is that it's truly free. Unlike some tax software that gives you a free federal return but then makes you pay to file your state return, the TurboTax Free Edition is free for both your federal and state returns. The only problem is that your tax return has to be extremely simple for you to qualify to use the free edition. And by extremely simple, I mean someone whose only income is reported on a W-2, maybe they have a small amount of interest and dividends, and they take the standard deduction. If your tax situation is more complicated than that, you'll need to use one of the paid editions that I'll talk about later in the episode. Now, just comparing the TurboTax Free Edition to the H&R Block Free Online Edition, you'll see that the TurboTax Free Edition is quite limited compared to H&R Block's free product. For example, if you take the student loan interest deduction, you'll have to use a paid TurboTax product, but you would still qualify for the free H&R Block product. The same is true for teachers who take the educator expenses deduction, for those who want to take a tax credit for education, those who wish to take a tax credit for childcare expenses, and a few other situations as well. So to be frank, TurboTax's free edition is kind of a letdown. If you have any semblance of complexity in your tax return whatsoever, you'll likely need to pony up for one of TurboTax's paid editions, be it the Deluxe, Premier, or Self-Employed. I'll get into the details of each of these plans later, but for now, let's touch on pricing. Now, TurboTax is many things, but cheap isn't one of them. As you can see in the table, the least expensive paid edition will set you back $80, and the most expensive will set you back $130. Compared to H&R Block's range of about $60 for the lowest price point and $97 for the highest price point, TurboTax definitely comes at a premium. Next, I'll give an overview of each of the TurboTax plans. The first paid edition is the TurboTax Deluxe Edition. The Deluxe Edition is the most popular paid TurboTax plan since it accommodates taxpayers with a typical middle-class tax situation, but doesn't necessarily have all the bells and whistles associated with the more expensive plans. Among other things, this edition allows you to take the following deductions and credits. You can see them on the screen. Itemized deductions on Schedule A, such as the mortgage interest deduction, property tax deduction, state income tax deduction, and charitable contributions deduction. Adjustments to income, such as the student loan interest deduction and educator expenses. Credits, such as the child and dependent care credit and the retirement savings credit. Adjustments to income such as the student loan interest deduction and educator expenses, credits such as the child and dependent care credit and the retirement savings credit. You can also report self-employment income on Schedule C using the TurboTax Deluxe Edition, but there's a catch. You can't report expenses. This is true for the Premier Edition as well. Maybe this is okay if you just picked up one or two freelancing assignments during the year, but if you're truly running a small business with many expenses, I would recommend that you pony up and go for the Self-Employed Edition, since your tax deductions will likely put far more cash back into your pocket than the $50 spread between the Deluxe Edition and the Self-Employed Edition. Also, if you would like a real CPA or EA to review your Deluxe Edition return to TurboTax Live, your total cost is $90 for your federal return and $50 per state return. The next paid plan is the TurboTax Premier Edition. The Premier Edition opens up Schedule D and Schedule E, which are used for capital gains and losses, such as stock sales, and rental income and loss in K-1s, respectively. In my opinion, the price jump is more than worth it since TurboTax can automatically import your stock gains and losses from most major online brokerages. Also, if you're a landlord, you'll obviously want to go with this option unless you need the Self-Employed Edition as well. And again, if you would like a real CPA or EA to review your Premier Edition through TurboTax Live, your total cost is $140 for your federal return and $50 per state return. The last paid plan is the TurboTax Self-Employed Edition. So finally, we have the Self-Employed Edition, which accommodates even the most complicated self-employment situations reported on Schedule C. And yes, you now have the ability to report business expenses. If you would like a real CPA or EA to review your Self-Employed Edition return through TurboTax Live, your total cost would be $170 for your federal return and $50 per state return. All right, now let's talk about the TurboTax user experience, and this is where it really shines. Overall, I found each section of the TurboTax walkthrough that I detail in this episode very user-friendly and easy to understand. Another aspect of the TurboTax user experience that I appreciated was that my tax due or refund amounts were ever present in the upper left-hand corner of my screen. These amounts would update as I provided more data to the software. I did not find this feature when testing H&R Block, though H&R Block did periodically let me know my tentative refund amount. Really, the only slightly annoying part of my TurboTax user experience was the ubiquitous upsells. So I'm going to talk about this up front to get it out of the way. So I did a few test tax returns in putting together this review, and I was surprised to find the upsells actually varied from return to return. Were they annoying? Yes. But is it a deal breaker? No. I understand that TurboTax is providing a valuable product, sometimes for free, and they need to increase margins any way they can. I just wish that these upsells weren't being pushed on people who would derive little benefit from them, and here's an example. The upsell I was shown during my first test return was for TurboTax Max Audit Protection. This service costs an additional $50. I honestly can't give an accurate review of this audit protection itself because I have no experience with it. That said, if your return is pretty much comprised of documents that others prepared for you, such as your W-2 or a 1099 div from your brokerage, your chance of being audited is extremely small. And even if you are audited, the IRS will probably just be asking for your tax forms to verify the items on your return. In other words, if your tax return is simple, you probably don't need this audit protection. Because the test tax return I was preparing at the time was a very simple return, just W-2 income, that's it. I found this offer for audit protection pretty distasteful. The other upsell I saw was to upgrade to TurboTax Plus. This provides for a flat $30 fee the following services: a one-on-one support specialist who can video chat with you to help you prepare your tax return, personalized tax tips based on your tax return, amended return support, tax document storage, audit support, and identity theft support. Again, I was preparing a test return using the free edition when I got this upsell, and I didn't like that. Remember, the TurboTax Free Edition is for people with incredibly simple tax situations, so I don't really think they need this kind of support for an extra $30. So watch out for these upsells, that's all I'm going to say. So the first thing you'll see after you sign up for TurboTax is a screen with 12 options that you can select, and TurboTax uses your selections to funnel you into one of the editions. Note that if you choose anything other than I have a job received, W-2, and I have children or dependents, TurboTax will steer you toward one of the paid options rather than the free option. If you're truly not sure which edition fits your situation the best, I would recommend going with the cheaper option. If it turns out you need the more expensive edition, you can just upgrade as you prepare your return. And remember, TurboTax doesn't take any payment up front, you simply pay when you file your taxes. Next, you'll be prompted to share your tax information with Intuit, TurboTax's parent company. The reason Intuit wants you to do this is so they can show you offers from their partners. For example, if on your tax return Intuit sees that based on the mortgage information you input that you may be able to qualify for a lower interest rate on your mortgage, Intuit will provide you with mortgage refinance offers. This could be helpful to you, but I personally don't like the idea of giving even more entities my most sensitive financial and personal data. If you're not comfortable with this, simply click No Thanks at the bottom of the second screen. This will not affect your tax return in any way. The next few screens will ask you for your personal information. This section is pretty basic and self-explanatory, so I'm not going to elaborate on it other than that you'll be sharing with TurboTax basic information such as your name, social security number, birth date, marital status, and address. Although sharing this kind of information, especially your social security number, over the internet can feel a bit strange, know that it is completely normal and necessary to complete your tax return. You'll also be asked how you filed your tax returns last year and how you feel about doing your taxes. On another screen, you'll be asked whether or not certain tax events happened in your life during the year. For example, whether or not you had a child. Be sure to click Show More at the bottom to be sure you didn't miss anything. As you work through the interface, you'll be shown a summary screen and also given the option to view the list of documents TurboTax thinks you'll need to prepare your return based on the information you provided. I would recommend viewing this list to make sure you have everything you need. At the end of it all, TurboTax will tell you what filing status it thinks would be best for you. Next up is the wages and income section where you guessed it, tell TurboTax about all the money you made during the year. TurboTax has a pretty cool W-2 import feature that works pretty well. After you input your employer's EIN in the W-2 input screen, TurboTax will see if your W-2 qualifies for automatic import. If it does, great. If not, no worries. You can simply input your W-2 information the good old-fashioned way, that is, using your keyboard. After your W-2 information is complete, you move on to your other income. TurboTax asks you a series of self-explanatory questions such as, did you make any money outside the United States? Did you receive any retirement income? Did you receive any interest payments? Did you sell any investments? Did you receive any dividend payments? And did you own or control a foreign bank account, trust, or financial asset? For kicks, I indicated that I received interest payments during the year, which triggered on the next screen a button where I could start telling TurboTax about the interest income earned during the year. The interest income input screen was very self-explanatory and followed the flow of Form 1099 interest rather well. After you've told TurboTax about all your income items, it's time to get to the good stuff, deductions and credits. Here's where you can tell TurboTax about your estimated tax payments, HSA or MSA, traditional or Roth IRA, student loan payments, and foreign taxes paid. I indicated that I made student loan payments during the year, which triggered on the next screen a button where I could start telling TurboTax about the student loan interest I paid during the year. I input that I paid $100 in student loan interest during the year. And guess what happened? TurboTax tried to upsell me to the deluxe edition, which costs $40 for federal and an additional $40 for state, for a total filing cost of $80. Strong language was used, such as the word need. Now, just to back up here, in this particular test, I indicated that I was a single filer living in California with $50,000 of W-2 wages as my only income and who takes a standard deduction. This puts me in the 22% tax bracket for federal income tax purposes and 8% for California purposes. This comes out to a combined 30% combined tax rate, meaning that a $100 deduction for the student loan interest I input would only result in $30 of tax savings. So I'd have to pay an additional $80 to TurboTax in order to get a deduction that would result in only $30 of tax savings. Now, I have no problem with TurboTax charging what it needs to for its services, but I do think that TurboTax could be more transparent here by stating exactly how much one would save in taxes by upgrading and maybe not using words like need. Note, H&R Block's free online edition does not make you upgrade to a paid version in order to report the student loan interest deduction. So after you finish inputting your deductions, TurboTax will let you know whether, based of course on the information you provided, taking the standard deduction or itemizing your deductions would make the most sense. Underneath the graphic, you can click a drop-down that says, show me the breakdown of my itemized deductions to see the details here. So before rushing to click the continue button, be sure to review the math here to make sure that you didn't forget to input something. The next few screens will ask you various questions to see if your tax situation requires any additional forms. These are things like, did you hire a live-in nanny or household employee? Do you want to apply your refund to next year's return? Do you want to designate $3 to the presidential campaign fund? And did you experience identity theft and receive an identity protection PIN, IP PIN from the IRS? The second, third, and fourth questions are rather self-explanatory, so I won't focus on them. And the first question is a rare enough situation that I'm not going to dwell on it, but please let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to review TurboTax's treatment of household employee filings. The next few screens will go over your state tax situation. Most of the information you need for your state tax returns will be transferred over from the previous inputs you made for your federal return. There may be some additional questions, such as whether you filed a state tax return last year, whether you filed a state tax return with a different name last year, if you're subject to state electronic payment mandates, and whether you have dependents for state tax purposes, but not for federal tax purposes. You'll be asked if you have certain kinds of income or deductions treated differently for state tax purposes than federal tax purposes. As the state taxes section is state specific, I'm not going into detail here other than saying that TurboTax's approach appears to be quite comprehensive. Finally, in certain states, you may see a screen about the alternative minimum tax, or AMT. Next, you'll be asked about if you purchased items outside your home state on which you weren't charged sales tax by your home state. If this is the case, you may be subject to use tax on these purchases. You'll also be asked if you think you may qualify for certain state-specific credits and tax breaks. Again, this question is state-specific, so I'm not going to go into detail here. So overall, the TurboTax user experience is very good and rather self-explanatory. The only downside I could see was the upsells. You got to be careful about those. I'm not saying that the TurboTax upsells are bad, and they very well might be good buys for some people, but not for everybody that they're pushed on. Another thing I look at when assessing a tax return is its ability to handle complex returns. Now, when I say a complex tax return, I'm not talking about some billionaire's tax return with hundreds of K-1s, foreign transactions, and all kinds of disclosures that need to be made. Frankly, people like that shouldn't be using TurboTax. They should probably be working with a tax professional. When I say complex return in this context, I'm describing middle-class complex, such as a return that involves all of the following: small business report on Schedule C, stock sales report on Schedule D, rental property report on Schedule E, and a K-1 also reported on Schedule E using the self-employed edition. I also ran a demo return through TurboTax with all of these items and was pleased with the results. The interface was easy to follow, somewhat foolproof, and the results were accurate. All right, now some words about the TurboTax app. Believe it or not, TurboTax is an app that you can use to file your taxes on the toilet. It appears that TurboTax blocks screenshots from being taken while in the app, so I can't really share any, but needless to say, the interface works much as the same as a desktop version with some key differences, such as the app gives you the option to scan your driver's license to autocomplete some information for you. You can also snap a photo of your W-2 to import it, and you get a pop-up every now and then to write the TurboTax app, as is common with pretty much any app these days. But other than that, it's extremely similar to the desktop version, including the upsells. I was extremely impressed by the app and had no complaints. It's fast and easy to use, much like the desktop version. Okay, so what about TurboTax customer service? Yes, TurboTax is a do-it-yourself tax software, but you aren't left to the wolves when it comes to technical support. At the top right of the TurboTax interface, you'll see 3 icons shown. Each one of them corresponds to a different level of support. The first line of defense when it comes to TurboTax support is the search function represented by the magnifying glass. When you type a question or topic in the search box, TurboTax provides you with one of 2 things, if not both: a link to the relevant part of the tax preparation screen to deal with your issue, and a link or links to similar questions TurboTax users have asked of the TurboTax community and the answers they received from others in the community. The first option is self-explanatory, but may not be the most helpful since you're just taken to an input screen. The second option, on the other hand, can be very helpful, but keep in mind that the answers to these questions are not necessarily from tax professionals, so they could be, and they're often anonymous. For example, here's an answer from someone with the username XmasBaby0 that appeared when I typed "I lost my W-2 form" into the search box. Now, XmasBaby0 actually gave a pretty good answer, but my point is that these answers are oftentimes completely anonymous, and you have no idea of how trustworthy or authoritative the individual actually answering is. That said, in my experience, the answers are helpful more often than not, but please don't take them as professional tax advice. The next support function is the TurboTax Assistant, which can be accessed by clicking on the question bubble. This is essentially a chat box that shows you relevant community answers when you ask it a question, so at the end of the day, quite similar to the search function. And then finally, you have TurboTax Live, which gives you the ability to live chat with the real CPA or EA directly on your screen. I must admit that this is a pretty cool feature. Of course, I can't fully review this aspect of TurboTax customer service because I have not used the CPA EA support myself, but I do like the idea of users being able to chat with a professional if they feel that they need one. That said, if you have a relatively straightforward return or even a moderately complex return, you probably don't need this level of support to accurately prepare your tax returns. So in conclusion, TurboTax is a great tax software, but it's not perfect by any means. To summarize, here are some pros and cons. Major pro number 1, great design. The flow of the TurboTax interface is truly premium and feels luxury. Pro number 2, accuracy. As far as I could tell based on the test returns I did, TurboTax prepared the returns accurately. That said, it is a tool and only as useful as the individual using it is knowledgeable. Pro number 3, cool app. The TurboTax app is fast and retains the easy interface of the desktop version, making doing your tax returns on your mobile device a breeze. Pro number 4, can handle complex returns. TurboTax was able to handle even the more complicated tax scenarios I threw at it. Now for TurboTax's major cons. Con number 1, it's expensive. TurboTax has the highest price point of any major retail tax software. Number 2, the free version is lacking. TurboTax's free version is not as robust and cannot handle as many tax scenarios as those of its competitors. Con number 3, upsells. You'll definitely be hit out with various upgrades that you may or may not need as you prepare your tax return in TurboTax. So should you use TurboTax? Well, if you use TurboTax, you can be confident that you'll be using a premium, easy-to-use product that will take most of the pain out of preparing your tax return. That said, it comes at a high price point and has a habit of upselling its more robust features that you may not actually need. The choice is up to you, but keep in mind that there are other tax preparation options available to you like H&R Block, Tax Act, and TaxSlayer. So there you have it, my review as a CPA of the TurboTax online tax software. Do you have any questions about TurboTax or about tax software in general? Let me know in the comments, and as always, please spank that like button and subscribe to Money Done Right.